Hello friends, welcome to a 12th episode on sleep. In response to a question from Instagram, I'm going to discuss how growth hormone is released during our sleep and how it affects our sleep. Now remember, growth hormone is released in the body in response to two signals. One is somatostatin and the other one is growth hormone releasing hormone, or GHRH. I will continue to call it GHRH during this talk. Growth hormone is then mediated by insulin-like growth factor 1 as well as ghrelin, the hunger hormone. Now most of what's been learned about how growth hormone affects our sleep has been learned from people that are growth hormone deficient. As we age, we lose sleep quality, but we also lose growth hormone production. However, there are certain people with unusually low growth hormone production. So these people tend to have one of two problems. Either their body is not producing growth hormone, or it's not producing growth hormone releasing hormone, which would then signal to the body to produce growth hormone. So growth hormone is released in the pituitary part of the brain. Growth hormone releasing hormone is released in the hypothalamus. So these people that are growth hormone deficient, or GHD, these people tend to have either a problem in the hypothalamus or a problem in the pituitary. If they have a problem in the pituitary, their hypothalamus will recognize that the body is not producing much growth hormone. So it will hyperproduce growth hormone releasing hormone in response to this realization that there's no growth hormone coming out. So these people tend to have high levels of GHRH and low levels of growth hormone. On the other hand, people who have a problem in the hypothalamus, they will have low levels of both hormones because they're not producing growth hormone, because although they can, they're not getting growth hormone releasing hormone, and they're not producing growth hormone releasing hormone because they have a problem in the hypothalamus. This is all a little bit detailed, but there's a reason I'm telling you guys this, so you can learn about how we learned about how growth hormone affects sleep. So the people with the pituitary problem, which means they're getting a lot of GHRH, but they're not getting much GH, they tend to have problems in their dream sleep, aka REM sleep, which is, just to remind you guys, during sleep we have about 5 cycles of sleep. We go through stages, which begin with non-REM sleep, which have stages 1 to 4, and then we have REM sleep, which is dream sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. During sleep we have 5 cycles of this, meaning 5 times we go into dream sleep and 5 times we go into non-REM sleep. What's interesting about this is that in the first half of the night we have longer periods of non-REM sleep, which is called deep sleep, because our brain waves are the slowest waves that we produce during our lifetimes, delta waves. So in the first half of the night we have cycles that have more non-REM sleep, and in the second half of the night we have cycles that have more REM sleep, which is dream sleep. In REM sleep, our brains are very awake, but our bodies are tranquil. In non-REM sleep, our bodies are tranquil, but our brains are tranquil, but our bodies are still rigid, or not rigid, but tense. So what happens when people don't produce much growth hormone, but they have a lot of growth hormone GHRH, is that during the second half of the night, when they're supposed to be in their dream sleep, they have worse dream sleep and they have more sleep fragmentation. On the other hand, people who have low GHRH have particularly bad sleep during the first half of the night, and they have lower quality of brain waves during their deep sleep, meaning that they probably mostly don't go into as deep delta wave sleep, and they stay sort of in the theta wave sleep, which is sort of in between being awake and being in deep sleep. So what's interesting about this and what it means is that growth hormone releasing hormone has an effect on deep sleep. And when that hormone is overactive, which means, for example, in a person that has low growth hormone naturally, their pituitary is not functioning, but their hypothalamus is still functioning, and it notices there's no growth hormone, so it produces more GHRH. When this happens, the person gets so much deep sleep that they don't get into as much REM sleep. And in the later half of the night, when it's supposed to be high in REM sleep, they can't sleep consistently because there's not supposed to be deep sleep at that time. There's not supposed to be non-REM sleep. And they have this overwhelming urge for non-REM sleep. In fact, these people are found to have more drowsiness during the daytime as well, because the hypothalamus is producing so much GHRH. Now, a side note, people who have shift work, meaning that they either work during the nighttime or they work in rotating shifts, they produce less GH at night, and they produce more fragmented and sporadic and unpredictable GH during the day. Which brings me to this second topic, which is when is GH supposed to be released in the body? So what happens is, and I'll add a graph somewhere here about how GH is released, but what happens is that we get our largest GH spike right after going to sleep. So remember, the first 4 hours of the night has the most non-REM sleep, and this is when the GH is released the most in response to GHRH. What happens is we have a large spike right after getting into stages 3 and 4. So remember, every cycle we begin with either stage 1 or stage 2, and then we go into stages 3 and 4. If we sleep very well, we go into stages 3 and 4 and have delta wave sleep and so on. So what happens is the first time you get into stages 3 and 4 during the night, you get a huge burst of GH. And then the individual bursts of pulses of GH decline, but the overall serum GH increases for the next 4 hours or so, after which it declines rapidly. And then during the day, you have some sporadic GH peaks, but they are way lower than what you get during the nighttime. Now, for shift workers, they get a very confused system where they get low peaks at different times. They get less at night, more in the daytime, but overall less. So having GH during the night, therefore, improves, because of GHRH, improves your delta waves and improves your stages 3 and 4 of sleep. Now, the other interesting things that I'd like to talk to you guys about in regards to GH and sleep is this. So as you'll recall from my video call entitled How Good Sleep Will Make You Smarter. So when you have bad sleep, what happens is that you have, or when you don't sleep, when you're sleep deprived, you're not able to retain as much information into your long-term memory, or your short-term memory actually. You need sleep before you learn something, the night before, to ready your brain to store the information into the hippocampus, and then you need sleep the next day or the next night to transfer that information from the hippocampus into the rest of the cortex. Meaning you connect the memory to the rest of your brain and you store it for long-term use. Now what happens is in sleep-deprived people, there's significant problems in their hippocampus. They get less synaptic firing in the hippocampus and generally have a degraded function of the hippocampus. So some researchers wanted to know, is this because of a lack of sleep or a lack of the growth hormone releasing hormone or GH during sleep? So they tested this out with subjects, and what they found is that during one night of acute sleep deprivation, if people were given exogenous growth hormone, their hippocampus worked better and their synaptic firing in the hippocampus worked better the next day, showing that growth hormone released during the night in non-REM sleep stages 3 and 4 in the first half of the night is very critical for hippocampal health. In fact, there's also a study on rats in which rats were given there's a control group, and then there was a group given melatonin and a group given growth hormone. And what they found is that the rats given melatonin or growth hormone, both of those groups had less brain, our brains atrophy as we get older. And the curiosity is this related to sleep as well? And it appears to be so, because the ones given melatonin and the ones given growth hormone had less brain damage or less neuronal death or apoptosis in their brains when they aged. Of course, they had to literally look at the rats' brains at the end of the study to find out how they look different than the control group, and they were basically younger brains. So this is some information on growth hormone and sleep. There's another couple of things I could mention. One is for you bodybuilders out there, be very aware. When you have sleep apnea, not only is it a huge risk, as I discussed in my video called pathological sleeping or something like that, like sleep disorders. If you have sleep apnea, not only is it a huge risk for your cardiovascular health and your brain health, but also it will cause you to release less GH during the nighttime, significantly declining your GH release during the night. And also a second thing I want to mention is there's an interesting theory about why we release GH so much during the night. And of course, it could have to do with our body's repair processes, which are circadian and things like that. But there's another theory, which is that so during the nighttime, we still release insulin, but we manage our blood sugar quite well. And so it's a question of why don't we go hypoglycemic during the nighttime? As you guys who are bodybuilders may know, growth hormone has sort of a counter-regulatory action in response to insulin. When growth hormone is released, we become insulin resistant. So there's a theory among researchers that the insulin resistance caused by the growth hormone release during the night actually helps us by preventing us from going hypoglycemic in response to insulin being released during the night. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something from it. Be very careful about your early stages of your sleep, your first 4 hours, if you want to have your growth hormone released. And remember that the growth hormone may be a big part of how we maintain our hippocampal firing the next day during after sleeping. Wish you guys a fruitful day, and I'll see you next time.